They're going to make us squeeze in tight anyway. They have quotas to meet too, yeah.
Wow. There should be a seat for everybody. There is.
Yes.
All right. Well, before I tell you about this space, I want to tell you a little bit about the submarine from the inside. We talked about the outer hull, the streamline shaped hull outside. There's another hull inside, and you're inside that hull now, and it's called the pressure hull. Pressure hull on this boat is made with 1.5-inch thick HY80 steel. HY80 steel is specially formulated so that the deeper the boat goes in the water, the stronger the steel gets, to a point. For this class of boat, if you got down to 1,050 feet, the hull would collapse. That's called crush depth. So the Navy established a test depth for this boat of 753 feet. Okay? Now, once a patrol, as we're getting ready to go on patrol, we go through a period of testing to make sure that everything is tied down on board, and we do angles and dangles to point the boat down, point the boat up, make high-speed turns to the right and to the left, just to see if anything breaks loose. Another thing we do is we go down to test depth, just to make sure that all the seawater inlets, like to cool the engines and reactors and stuff like that, won't rupture. And as a matter of fact, we always go 1 foot below test depth, just to say we did it. So on this boat, they would have gone down. I never served on this boat, but they would get on to 754 feet, just to say they did it. Now, between the two hulls are where the ballast tanks are located. This boat does not want to sink by itself. It's a boat. And so they have to add tons of weight in the bilges to bring the boat close to neutral buoyancy so that when they do flood the ballast tanks with water, the boat will actually be able to dive. Okay? To bring the boat back up, they shut the valves and they pump high pressure air into the ballast tanks to evacuate the water, and that's how the boat comes back up to the surface. The pounds per square inch of air that they use on this boat was 3,000 pounds per square inch, which was fine until the Thresher, SSN 593, was undergoing sea trials off the coast of Virginia in 1963, and she got down a main seawater inlet to the primary coolant for the reactor burst, and 3,000 pounds per square inch wasn't enough to bring that boat back up to the surface, and everybody died, and the boat is still down there. So the Navy instituted a program called SubSafe, and every submarine that was alive then has been backfitted, and the ones that have been built since then have been backfitted with a system called SubSafe. SubSafe increases the pressure of those air tanks to 4,000 pounds per square inch, and includes some switches up in the control room that are orange, and they're called chicken switches. So if something untoward happens to the submarine, they just throw those switches and the submarine makes an uncontrolled ascent to the surface. We call that an emergency blow. Okay? All the all the water is evacuated and the boat comes up. Well, this boat right here, which happens to be the USS Houston, the last submarine I was ever on, did that maneuver for the movie The Hunt for Red October. And the only reason why she was allowed to do that is, number one, the Navy gave the skipper permission to respond to the film company to do that. And the skipper knew what he was doing because he had lots of way on. And so when he came out of the water, when the boat came back down, it settled on the water like that. In an emergency blow situation where you have no forward way, no forward motion, you'll come up out of the water like that. And if you came up out of the water like in that position, you slide right back down the same way you came up, and you only have a very little time before you get to crush depth. So it's not a safe maneuver. As a matter of fact, it cost the movie company $5 million for that scene.
Wow.
And the reason why is because when the boat came down the water, this whole nose on the 688 class submarine is fiberglass, and it covers the sonar dome. When they came down that water, it split the fiberglass while the bottom of the movie company had to replace it. It was $5 million later. So, yay for us. So anyway, and we'll see some of those weights when we get down to that are in the bilges when we get down to the galley. Galley's located right below us. Speaking of which, we are in the wardroom. This is officers' country. This is where the officers lived and worked, and where they planned their strategy, where they ate their meals, where they did the training, and where they relaxed. There were 8 officers on this boat, normal complement, and 77 enlisted for a normal crew complement of 85. When spooks were on board, what are spooks? Spooks were the people who came on that operated the cryptologic equipment we had on board to do the intercept with Soviet communications and radar signals. There were 14 more people. Okay, I was a spook for 25 years, and seems like yesterday, but I'll be telling sea stories as we go from compartment to compartment about some of the things that went on during my career. And I retired back in 1986. Commanding officer was the only guy on board that had his own private stateroom. In fact, he was the only guy on board who could sit up in his rack without banging his head. Okay? His rack was a little bit, notice I call them racks, not bunks. His rack was a little bit bigger than everybody else's. The executive officer had his own stateroom also, but he had to share his with visiting dignitaries because there was another rack that folded down off the overhead, and that's where the visitors slept. The other 6 officers shared 2 3-man staterooms that were removed when they put the ladders in so that we could bring tours on board for the museum. That accounted for the 8 officers. And the 77 crew will go through their spaces, their berthing spaces, as we go through the boat. The officers ate the same food as the enlisted people. It was prepared in a galley, which is directly below us, and brought up to the pantry here via a dumbwaiter, which is located behind this bulkhead. The stewards would take the food out, do the final prep, and come out and serve the officers. Okay? The CO sat here, commanding officer sat here, executive officer sat here, and there was a little button underneath his chair that he could press and ring a bell if they needed the stewards to come out and do something for them. Right? Now, nobody eats anything in the wardroom until the commanding officer takes the first bite. Those are the rules. And you have to have rules, otherwise military discipline breaks down. There are also 3 topics of conversation that are never discussed in the wardroom. Number 1, politics. Number 2, religion. Number 3, can anybody guess?
Work.
No work, no work. That was all you were talking about.
Disaster movies about boats?
No.
Women.
You got it. You're getting A. You're out to sea, you're on a 90-day patrol, 75 days out, and you got all kinds of weird things going through your mind about your wife or your significant other, and we don't talk about women at all. Everywhere else on the boat, fine, but not in the wardroom. Any questions so far?
How do you navigate when you're underwater?
I'll explain that when we get up there, okay? When we get up to control. Now, the wardroom is connected to control. That was sort of like a nice segue, thank you. It's connected to control, we're all on the same deck, okay? And this deck, because it's connected to the control room, has to be able to, when the sun goes down, be rigged for red light. And we rig for red light so that your eyes become adjusted to the dark. You've gone from a bright sunlit place into a dark room, and it takes you a while to even see anything. Even in the middle of the night when I get up, have to go to the restroom. It takes me, if there's been bright light,